Hey guys, it's Lee. I wanted to make a quick video and touch on a topic that it seems to be that a lot of people aren't aware of. And that is that when harvesting many of your brassicas, like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, you can get more than one harvest off of each plant. You'll have, for cabbage, for example, you'll have your main head that you harvest. And then if you leave the plant and continue to care for it, you'll get multiple smaller heads growing from the same stem. And broccoli, you get side shoots after you harvest your main head, or you might get suckers. So let's go into the garden and check it out. This is the remains of our fall garden that we've put in and been following along with. I harvested these cabbages, this row of cabbage. I harvested the cabbage heads and we made sauerkraut with them. We cooked a bunch fresh and made sauerkraut with the rest. And the little new heads are already starting to sprout, so we'll show you that. And that second row is all broccoli. Now, we harvested all of the heads of broccoli on December 21st, I believe it was, just before the big frost, maybe the 22nd, just before we had that bad frost. And over the next couple weeks, they started putting out their little side shoots, and I've been eating them as I go. I'm working in the garden, I'm eating broccoli, bushed them out. Um, and I've let them go a little bit, and today they're just loaded. I mean, we're going to get a pretty good harvest of quote unquote side shoots off of the broccoli. And also, a lot of your brassicas will put out what some people call suckers. You have your main stem, which you'll get a broccoli from, and then you'll have a side shoot that'll come off that same stalk. So essentially, you have two plants on one root system. So let's take a closer look and see what we're talking about. Now, here's a really good example of a plant that's formed quite a few suckers. See, this is our main, and it's hard to see. I pulled off a bunch of leaves so you could see, but it's still tricky. Here's your main stalk down here coming from the ground. This is the main stalk. This is where I harvested the original head of broccoli from. Now, the little quote unquote side shoots are already gone. It's not putting them out anymore, but it's putting out a bunch of suckers. See, here's a brand new sucker that's sprouting off of that stalk. Here's probably the most well-developed sucker coming off of that stalk. And see, it has a pretty considerable head of broccoli on it. So each one of these suckers will give you a head of broccoli. Now, immediately after you harvest this head of broccoli, you're going to get side shoots that'll come off, and you can pick them and harvest them. So this is a great example of a plant that's put out a bunch of quote-unquote suckers. Now, here's your cabbage resprouts. This is a cabbage that we harvested just a week ago. I've read online you got to use a special knife and harvest them so carefully so that they'll resprout. But if you watch the other video, I just snapped them off. These are your little cabbage resprouts. And interestingly enough, from what I understand, is these heads, when mature, combined will equal the same mass, the same size as the cabbage head that you harvested off the stem. Whether or not that's accurate and true, I don't know yet. We're going to find out. But the secret to getting this to happen is that when you harvest your head of cabbage, you don't pull off all the old lower leaves, which is why when you're priming your brassicas, you got to be careful you don't remove too many lower leaves. So we're going to keep an eye on these and see how they develop. Also, I had read that these resprout heads are actually more flavorful than your original cabbage head. So we're going to see about that. The resprout heads on this plant are a little further along than the others because I harvested this head several days earlier to cook for cabbage. So pretty neat. It almost looks like big Brussels sprouts. This is going to be a pretty considerable amount of broccoli that I'm going to harvest today. Off that plant, just got 3 large florets. See there? Big full-size florets, almost like mini. They're basically mini heads.
course, I'm going to pull some of these tender leaves off as well. Broccoli greens are my absolute favorite greens. I think they're more flavorful and delicious than all the others. Our collards are still happy and big and beautiful and growing. I'll leave a couple on each bush to get bigger. So when you harvest, if you'll notice, see here's the head you're harvesting, or the floret. Here's a new one right next to it. There's a new one down there. So that's what happens when you harvest this one. If you leave this one, it's going to shoot up. So you harvest this one's going to shoot up and do the same thing as this one. And then after you harvest this one will shoot up and do the same thing that one was doing. So it's just kind of a renewable, self-regenerating source of food, all from one seed. It's an absolute miracle. So here's our little new sucker. So this is the floret we're going to harvest. And I just leave that little, harvest this, leave that little sprout in place. You can see it right there. That right there. That'll regrow another floret. So this harvest here, this is, I'd say it probably represents 50% of the original harvest. I harvested 9 heads of broccoli off of those plants originally. And then this total harvest probably in volume is 50% of that original harvest. Now it also bears worth noting that every time you do this, the resprouts get smaller and smaller. See, these are the original resprouts from directly after I harvested the heads. So they're nice and big and full. But each time you do that, they get smaller and smaller. Some would say they get more and more flavorful. I don't know about that, but they do get smaller. So it's a renewable resource. It's really not never ending. We're ready to start the spring garden anyway, so we're going to go ahead and pull these plants this weekend. One last thing I'll show you before we close out is a broccoli plant that is in full bolting. So telltale signs of brassica bolting is a rapid upwards shoot growing, and then these rapidly spreading heads, and they just form into flowers. These flower pods are actually fairly edible. I ate some earlier. They're really delicious. So this plant I'm going to transplant into a pot, and I'm going to let this one go to seed, and I'm going to collect the seeds because I really enjoyed this broccoli this year. The rest of these flowers, I'm going to go ahead and harvest them to eat them. Now I'll show you how many seeds one plant can create. So each one of these flowers doesn't create one seed. Each one of these flowers creates a little pod, almost like a little tiny, looks like a little tiny green bean. So there's thousands and thousands of seeds in here. Now, you can see how small a brassica seed is. These are from last year. You see how small one seed is? They're just so tiny. So this is a bag. This is a bag of seeds that I harvested from last year. So not only does one
just a few plants feed you well, it creates scores and scores of potential plants for next year, seeds and plants to share with your friends and family and neighbors. So I love it. Happy gardening, everyone.